Alrighty, I've got another game for you. This game took place a couple of days ago. I just haven't had a chance to record it yet, but it is quite awesome in a couple of different ways. I'm up against Farsight Enclave, who I don't think I've played before. And as you can see, he's going first. I'm playing Azami, not because I think it's a particularly great deck, but more because I'm just playing it for variety's sake. I find among my commander decks is actually one of the more fun ones to play. It's kind of goofy. I think it's definitely a tier 2 deck. People seem to think that Azami is just some unbeatable death machine relative to other commanders, but they're probably just annoyed because it's always mono blue, so it generally always gets paired with counterspells. He's playing Captain Sisay, which can be really threatening. I find that this is one of those decks that's sort of like Kiki Jiki, that if they draw Soul Ring or Mana Crypt early, it makes their deck about 5 times better. If they just develop slowly, it's much, much easier to contain and control. They don't tend to get out of hand. But yeah, my draw is really quite good. I've got Halimar Depths to go and look for land. I already have Mana Drain, looking pretty solid. He unfortunately is going first, and you will see what he does. Wish there was a bit of a... I'll put my hand up here. Screw it. Let's switch these guys. I don't need to look at them. Alright, here we go. Doink. I don't know why it always puts my hand up there. Buggy replays. So, turn 1 Soul Ring. That's going to give him quite an advantage. As I just said, this deck is much more dangerous, probably 3 or 4 times better if it draws turn 1 Soul Ring. Because he's going to have his Captain Sisay out before I can even counterspell it, provided he draws a white. And there it is. So, let me stretch this out a bit. Right, screw it, I'm just going to put my hand down here. Sorry I'm spending so much time messing around with my cards in hand. Okay. So I could develop here, but I'm really, really worried about him putting out Gaddock Teeg. Not that I have anything in my hand particularly screwed by it, but I have plenty of things in my deck, and a lot of my outs against what he might be doing are based around high mana spells, like Cyclonic Rift. I can't let him have Gaddock Teeg at all. And if he's good, and if his deck works right, and look at that. Right on schedule, he has Gaddock Teeg. So, of course, I have to Mana Drain that. I also kind of want to, and he follows it up with Sylvan Library with 5 cards in hand. So this game's just gone from bad to worse. So I had the option of running out of Azami here, but given the amount of mana he has in play already, he's already got 5 plus the Sylvan activation. If he hits a Mana Crypt or a Vault, he can just use Captain Sisay to go get the Grand Cenobite, which pretty much wins the game for him instantly, since it kills all of my wizards, but probably this guy. So as much as I would like to just run Azami out right here, I need to develop a little bit more instead. What I decided to do is ultimately bounce Captain Sisay, because even if he can draw extra cards, at least I can shut the Captain off for a little bit. So I just developed my mana and bounce Captain Sisay to keep it sick for a bit. This is looking terrible. And then my opponent just decides not to keep any cards. And I can't really question the judgment of that, but, or I should say, all I can do is question the judgment of that. Especially given he needs to get 2 white in play. And him not taking an extra card here, or at least 1 or 2 extra cards, makes a huge difference this game. So he replays Captain Sisay. I had the option of going during my upkeep and, say, Mystical Tutoring for a Into the Royal or something just to slow him down further. But ultimately I decided that I'd rather just sit on the Forbid at this point. And I think about, for a while my game plan actually here is to just cast Azami. And again, I'm terrified of the prospect of him getting the Grand Cenobite. I assume he has a Plains on top of his deck, even though he played a Yavimaya Hollow. So he would just get Cenobite, cast it, kill both my guys, and that would be game. So I have to just assume that he's going to cast Grand Cenobite next turn and play accordingly. So with that in mind, I've just planned to cast the Chronologist and bide my time. Again, he takes no damage. And he plays a forest. So he gets this guy, Dosan the Falling Leaf. And Dosan is pretty annoying, obviously. He plays Aura Shards first, which I obviously have to let through, even though it could kill my Mind Stone. I had the option here of forbidding with buyback, but I ultimately decided not to do it because my plan at this point is to cast Azami next turn and hopefully draw into an island, which will allow me to Mystical Tutor for Force of Will and stop his next play, and then I've got the engine going a little bit, and maybe I can stay on top of whatever he's doing per turn. So I'm not going to buy it back because I really want the Mystical Tutor and I want an extra blue card. So I've got a turn here and I draw Karn. Obviously awesome for long-term prospects and bad right now. So now we're set. All I've got to do here is draw an island in these two cards and I'm good. So I tap Azami and I get a Martyr. I tap the Chronologist and I get a Rift. Sigh. So at this point I'm like positive I'm going to get totally owned by his Grand Cenobite. Because I no longer even have the ability to go get Force of Will or Pact of Negation. So instead I'm just gonna sit here and expect to lose the game. He finally takes damage, taps this guy, and reveals a white mana source. So had he just been more aggressive with his Sylvan and gotten a second white earlier on in the game, he would have just gotten Grand Cenobite and won the game. Instead, he has to wait a turn, and he casts this worthless thing, which other than killing my Mind Stone does almost nothing. And he casts this guy who's totally obnoxious. So, the Grand Cenobite plan is still very much in effect. I have to deal with Grand Abolisher before I can deal with the Cenobite. Finally draw an island. So I've got a bunch of choices here. I've got the Cyclonic Rift, but I'm too far away from being able to play it. I could potentially, and this thing's also active again, so I have to assume the Grand Cenobite is just coming. So top priority is simply getting Grand Abolisher off the board. I love Martyr of Frost in a situation like this. And obviously I can't play my Lotus because of Aura Shards. So I'm just hanging out. End of turn, he gets Pendelhaven. Opts to take no damage again. So yeah, this guy should be at 16 health or 12 or something right now, and I should be badly losing. Instead, we still actually have a reasonable game. So he casts the Abolisher again. And I draw into a Remand, which is just perfect. My plan was possibly to just power sink for a bunch of mana to keep him tapped out for the turn, but drawing Remand is awesome, because again, he's stuck at 2 white. He gets Kamal, Fist of Krosa. Another deadly threat, but one that I can deal with right now. And here's where he starts to whine because he's no longer just totally thrashing me. He says, wish Azami wasn't so OP. And so my response is, wish Sol Ring didn't exist in this format, which I think is true. I'd say Sol Ring's quite a bit worse than Azami. And then he says, you're an Azami player. What was the rest of his comment? Oh, you're playing Azami. Oh, no, that's right. You're an Azami player. Your opinion means null. So apparently because I'm playing Azami, my opinion on the format is meaningless. And I said, what? I have a zillion commander decks. And then he says, you're playing Azami. Funny. It's funny how Azami is just viewed as being so degenerate when in fact I think it's like definitely a tier 2 creature. The reason I think that, I don't know if I've talked about it at length, is because even though you're mono blue, you're forced to play mono blue, which has a lot of vulnerabilities, and you're also forced to populate your deck with all sorts of bad wizards, like this guy and this thing. I don't know, this thing kind of sucks too. This sucks. Like, relative to the power level of stuff in the format, most of the wizards you play are garbage. I mean, you get cool ones like Trinket Mage and Snapcaster Mage and the Glenelendra Archmage, but you have to play tons of bad wizards too. I'm playing with that stupid Sea Scryer in my deck, for Christ's sake. That thing is horrible. So anyway, I've got plenty of defense again. Thankfully I've got a lot of blue cards in my hand. He finally takes some more damage. And he casts the Abolisher. So I'm going to try to stock up on some blue cards here in response. So even though I've got the Sower now, I'm pretty interested in, and Sower is actually an interesting, has an interesting interaction with his Cenobite. If he, actually no, I guess I can't. I guess that doesn't really work, does it? I cast it and my guy just immediately dies. Yeah, it doesn't work. Never mind, it's a bad interaction. So I've just stocked up with a bunch of blue cards. I have a ton of them, and my plan ultimately is to just get him to tap out here and then counter it with Mana Leak. Since all I need to do is just buy time. So I sack the Martyr, and I don't even want to show him the Mana Leak. I show him all this. Click, Sower, Merchant Scroll, Negate, Future Sight, Oracle, and Mystical Tutor. I like how he also, he sees the Negate here too. So he just lets it go. Casts a Greaves that I don't care about. Gets Mind Slaver. Not exactly the smartest play when your opponent just showed you a Negate. So now he's got his guy equipped. But I'm starting to feel quite good about the game now, given that I've got Mystical Tutor in my hand, so I can always use that option if I keep mana available. So now it's time to Sower his guy, which is really, really quite nice. And I realize in retrospect, I should have definitely cast my Click first to see what was in his hand, because if he's got, I'm now basically gambling on, or counting on playing Seaborn Muse, tapping out on my turn, and then getting all my mana back to defend on his turn. But knowing what he had in his hand probably would have been worthwhile to do. So I cast a Click afterward, which is definitely a mistake. And he's got basically a hand full of giant white mana creatures, like Sun Titan and some like 8 mana white flyer. And he's got this guy, which of course I need to keep out of play to prevent these two dudes from coming back. So I just make him cycle his Karmic Guide. And I'm done again. I get all my land back. He did not use Captain Sisay at the end of the turn either. So now, on top of his deck was Elash Norn, which may have been, I guess, the reason why he didn't use it. Not that it makes any sense. But there it is. So I say to him, was wondering when he'd show up. But I assume my opinion doesn't matter, because Azami is so OP. I'm just going to draw a million cards. I just drew into Snapcaster Mage, so I've got Mana Drain on Cenobite. But I decided I'd rather Cryptic Command it, since my hand... Well, I guess I could just cast a Karn. But that's it. I actually think I was just going to go Mystical Tutor and get some more defense. My plan was probably to just Snapcaster and Mana Drain. And Snapcaster plus Riptide is pretty insane, too. And so he says, geez, well, I'm just bored. Good game. As is common in this format, your opponent starts to get, or I should say the boredom of your opponent is inversely proportional to their success of winning the game. And certainly directly proportional to your chances of winning the game when you're playing against them. A lot of people tend to get bored when they start to lose really badly. But anyway, this is a pretty cool game just to see an awesome comeback against a turn 2 Captain Sisay followed by a turn 3 Gaddock Teeg Sylvan Library draw. And I did it with Azami rather than a really actually good deck. Hope you enjoyed the replay. See you later.